Thank you.
All right, it looks like the trickle of attendees coming in has stopped, so let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to our CA IDMS Community webcast for this month. Thanks very much for joining us. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Len Thompson, and I am the community manager for all of CA's mainframe communities, including the IDMS one. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. I see that many of you are using the webcast audio, the WebEx audio to listen to this, which is great. If you have questions along the way, please use the Q&A box since you are not on the phone line. If you are on the phone, I see a handful of you are, please stay on mute. We are recording this session so we can share the replay video out in the community later this week, and we just want to make sure that it's as clean as possible. If you don't see the Q&A box in the lower right of your screen, if you go along the bottom of your screen, you'll see various icons, microphone, video, etc. If you don't see the question mark icon, if you click the icon that has the 3 dots, it will open up for you, and you'll see the Q&A icon in there. So click on that, and the box will open for you. And with that, I'm going to hand you over to Cal and Sheila, and we'll get started. So thanks again for joining us.
It's all yours, Cal.
Oh, okay, Sheila. Thanks. Sorry. Good morning, everyone. This is Cal Domang. It's nice to have you all on the phone with us this morning. We can proceed right ahead, Sheila, if you would. We're doing a bit of a tag team this morning, guys, so occasionally you'll hear me ask Sheila to go ahead and forward the slides. So today we're gathered to look at Visual DBA, CA IDMS Visual DBA, which some of you may be familiar with, or it may be completely new to many of you. It's a great tool that can be used for many folks, and with recent developments, it's basically, there are ways for it to be useful to virtually everyone in your shop, all the way from analysts to programmers, database administrators, as well as your end users. If you want to go ahead and forward again, Sheila. So these are the main topics we'll be covering this morning. I'll talk a little bit about just what Visual DBA is, what you can do with it, what it can help you with, and then I'll spend a little time talking about tailoring it, which is what makes it useful for virtually everyone in your shop in various ways, no matter what their security limitations might be and or their needs might be. And then we'll talk a little bit more about where things are going in the future for IDMS with our WEBCAST series. So Sheila, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, thank you. So what is Visual DBA? Basically, it's a GUI-based tool. It will make most of your jobs easier if you work with IDMS. It will not program for you, but other than that, it can be helpful. And it actually can be used for prototyping some programming statements, so it can even be helpful in that realm. What you see on the right, we're not going to be doing a live demo this morning, but what we will see throughout the presentation is several slide captures from Visual DBA, so you get a sense of it. So what you're looking at on the right is a kind of a complex presentation. We've got 4 different panes set up there, which so you can see various things that you can do with Visual DBA. The 2 on the left are different tearouts, and they are looking at different dictionaries, perhaps within the same CV, perhaps within different CVs. So you'll see that you can monitor multiple CVs at the same time, and what we're looking at, again, on the left is kind of the tree setup for Visual DBA and mainly how it's structured. And on the right, you're seeing a couple of different graphs for ways that Visual DBA can present data to you. So if you go right on, please, Sheila. Thank you. So let's talk a little more in depth about what you can do with it. This is just a list of how it can help you, again, regardless of what your job role is. It can do things like manage your database, your system, all of the definitions basically that you may have in IDD or in the various schemas. You can use it to monitor and dynamically adjust the settings in your CV, so you can check the activity see the implications or changes caused by any dynamic modifications that you make. As I mentioned a second ago, you can access multiple CVs at the same time. All of the utilities which can be executed through the CV or online in an IDMS CV, you can do here, but from this much more perhaps modern and user-friendly GUI front end. So I'll probably iterate this a few times, but it will save you from having to learn or memorize syntax and allow you a much more point-and-click approach. Allows you to search the log of the CV and manage IDD modules, and we'll see examples of all of these things as we go through the presentation. Sheila, if you would, please. Thank you. So why would you want to use Visual DBA? Well, one of the reasons is you see, I guess, on the third line here, the one I just mentioned, no syntax. It's very much point-and-click driven. It also provides windows which allow you to enter syntax if you want to do that, if you already know it. So you can do that, especially if you're testing the tool out, want to put it through its paces. You can run the syntax through one of the compilers using Visual DBA and then compare that to the point-and-click approach, and you can see how the two work. So if you're ever curious about what syntax is being executed or how it compares to what you've been executing, there are ways to do that as well. It uses a very explorer tree type approach, both for all the definitions in the dictionary as well as for monitoring your runtime system, all without the use or the need for any JCL. It does have an online help. It provides dashboards to help manage your usage of it, to monitor your systems. It's also got a drag and drop facility, so if you have a definition that you've already created in one dictionary or in one central version and you'd like to copy it to another, it's a very easy drag and drop type way to do that. There are also ways within Visual DBA to limit people's access to whatever you desire their security and access to be. And I'll talk about that more towards the end. Here's an example, again, of why you might want to use it that's much more graphic. So on the right, you see a CV. At the bottom of the black screen, you can see where it says enter next task code. So it's already prompted for what you might want to do next. And up at the top, you see a command that someone just entered. It was a DCMT display queue OLQ note. So they entered this DCMT command at the enter next task code. It executed it and made this display. And then displayed the prompt so that indicator was ready for the next command. On the left side, you'll see how you would accomplish the same thing in Visual DBA. So you'll see in the tree diagram in the left panel there that we've expanded the tree under activity, and then a little further down we've expanded active queue, and there's one there that lists OLQ note. So using Visual DBA, you might know you want to monitor the queues, but you might not know what the names of those queues are. So you can use this point and click just to see which queues happen to be active in the system. If there's more than one, you can click them one at a time and just get all the information on them. Whereas on the mainframe, in order to do that, you would have either already had to know the queue name, or you would have to do a DCMT display active queues command to get the name of the queue, and then go back and issue another command to see the queue itself. So as you can see, it may be quicker. It's definitely a bit simpler to use Visual DBA to accomplish the same results. And as you can see, if you compare the details in those two windows, they were identical. No, it's fine. We're happy to move on. Thanks. So I'll talk briefly about installation. It's very, very straightforward. You can download it from our website. It must run on a certified Windows platform, so either Vista, Windows 7. As new Windows platforms come out, we make sure that Visual DBA is compatible with them and runs on them. It can also run on a terminal server. And here you'll see a link to documents on how to install all aspects of PC, all aspects of Visual DBA, both on the PC side, as we see here, and on the mainframe, which we'll see on the next slide. Sheila, if you would be so good. Thank you. So basically, Visual DBA is running usually from your laptop, and as you see here, there will be an IDMS backend, and the backend, which is running on the mainframe, Visual DBA can connect to all of our supported releases. There's no specific license that is required for SQL option or server anymore, since we have gone to our new broader access model. When you get Visual DBA, when you download it and begin to install it, there are scripts that are provided with it. So you can use those scripts to actually do the mainframe installation. It uploads or it defines a few table procedures and views, which is what Visual DBA uses to accomplish all of its magic. You can do the installation actually using Visual DBA itself. That will require creating a user profile first, or you can do it using IDMS VCF. But either way, you can use those scripts that we provide. Thanks. There are a couple of versions of Visual DBA out there, Release 16 and our latest, Release 17. Both of them are fully compatible with all of the mainframes. You may have to reinstall your mainframe component of Visual DBA if you upgrade your mainframe release. Visual DBA is also compatible with IDMS Server Release 17, which is our latest release of that, and Visual DBA 18.0, which is the latest release of it, will coexist with any release of Visual DBA that you've got on the mainframe, so no need to reinstall anything. Thanks, Sheila. So in terms of, as I was noting a minute ago, various releases of IDMS, as you change them running on the mainframe, Visual DBA is being kept current. So as new features are introduced on the mainframe, if we were, for example, to create a new utility, then you will be able to access the functions of that utility using Visual DBA also, because Visual DBA is kept enhanced to support whatever one can do on the mainframe. That includes all these different areas, any modifications we might make within those different categories, as well as any others. And as always, with both the mainframe and Visual DBA, our staff has an ongoing determined focus on meeting client needs, and we very much want to keep you happy. If we could go forward, please. Great. So we'll look here, go right ahead, please, Sheila. We'll look now at a few various slides of what Visual DBA can help you with. So when you open this application on your laptop, this is the initial screen you will see, and we haven't seen this configuration quite yet, so I'll take a moment to explain it. What you see here on the left is the node window, and that node will list all of the data sources that you have defined on your laptop using the ODBC Data Administrator tool. Those will automatically pop up here. Now, when you're doing the installation on the mainframe, you will be uploading or using IDMS VCF to update these CVs. Each of these nodes is actually a mainframe CV. And so you will need to upload some definitions to whichever of these you want to be able to use Visual DBA to access, and all of that is explained in the documentation we were just pointing to. If we can move ahead now, please. Sure. Thank you. So here you see the next slide. What we've done is we've connected to one of the nodes, and what that does is it opens this tree for that particular node. And if you look at the very top, the green bar across the Visual DBA screen print, it says Filtest. So that was one of the nodes on the previous screen. So you can see that Visual DBA will indicate which CV you're connected to, and that's handy when you get to the point of opening multiple windows that might be connected to different CVs. So each window will indicate the central version that it's connected to, and then it'll open this run tree. And I'll pause here for just a moment to highlight something, which is you see several entries here. The first one is dictionary, and then CV, within the CV, your DB table, your DMCL, your system, and then activity, the central version itself, DC, and some statistics. So the comment that I want to make here that may not be immediately apparent is that this very first entry, dictionary, is where all of your definitions reside. So if you want to modify, for instance, the definition of your database table or your DMCL or your sysgen itself, all of that you would do under that dictionary tab, and you will see as we expand that tree in future slides what that looks like. All the rest of these tabs from CBDB table down are allowing you to monitor and dynamically change your runtime system. So just want to be very clear about that up front. There's lots of different ways to access the runtime system, and all of your definitions are in this very first entry in the tree, the dictionary. Great, so if we could move on now, please, Sheila. Thank you. So here you see on the left-hand pane, we've actually expanded most of the branches, or as many as would fit in this window, so you get a sense of what that looks like. So when you expand the dictionary entity, you'll see all of the dictionaries where we have added the Visual DBA definitions. So those are all of the dictionaries within this fill ESP. We're looking at a different CV now. Within this fill ESP CV, we're looking at all the dictionaries to which Visual DBA has been defined. And then you'll see under, so you can get current on those, you can display them, you can do lots of things there with the definitions, we can change any of the definitions there. You'll see here for the DB table, we can look at the subschema mapping, the various DB names, the DB groups, and if you were to click any of those and expand them, you would see, these trees go further down. There are many entries underneath these. We can move on ahead, please. So what we've done here is expanding a little further. You can see starting at the very top, we're still connected to the fill ESP central version. We've expanded the dictionary tree, which means we're looking at our definitions. And we've gone into the sysdict dictionary, and we've expanded that tree. So you can see underneath this all of the different entity types which you can access, and that is true regardless of where these are stored. So for instance, if you glance down a little bit, you can see the DMCL, the DB table, the DMCL, the system, any groups you have defined, the central version. Going back to the top, you'll see SQL schemas, and then a little further down, non-SQL schemas. So it allows you to access virtually anything you have defined in your system, regardless of the mainframe tool that you would use to create that definition if you were doing it on the mainframe itself. Going ahead, please, Sheila. And here you'll see what I alluded to a little earlier. We have two windows open, which you can tell by the colored bar at the top. These are both accessing the same CV, fill test, but you can see we're at different places within that same central version. So the top, we haven't really expanded at all. It's just there waiting to see what we want to do with it. And at the bottom, we've expanded the dictionary tree. We're looking at dictionary sysdict, and we've opened up, or we've clicked rather, on the SQL schema entity type. So you'll see on the right-hand window at the bottom, a list of all of the SQL schemas which have defined in this sysdict dictionary, which have been defined in sysdict on fill ESP. Now, if we wanted to copy those to a different dictionary, we could open that other dictionary in the top window, simply click on the schema we want in the bottom window, and do a drag and drop and move it up to the top. And it will ask you a couple of questions like, do you want to copy all the children that might be associated with this? And for an SQL schema, those children might be tables, views, constraints, table procedures. So it'll ask you if you want to copy all of those. You would answer yes or no, and it gives you a little warning that if you're copying children, it may take a little while. Moving right ahead. Great, and so you see here, we've returned to just a single CV that we're looking at, a single large window. And on the left pane, you can see that we're not in the dictionary anymore, so we're not looking at definitions. We're actually looking at our CV system, the system itself. And so underneath that, you can see all the different entity types within the system that you can monitor at runtime. So you could look at your load lists, the programs that are defined, queues that are defined in your CV, storage pools, etc. And you see on the right-hand side in that pane, there's a list of tabs. There's the CV system there, which shows you the branch of the tree we're under, and then underneath that you can see a different tab which correlates to all the entries in the tree on your left. So you can use either the right-hand side or the left-hand side to navigate to drill down to wherever you want to be. Next slide, please. Thanks. So here's an example where we've gone a little further in the same place. We're still in the CV system, but we've gotten current on the storage pools, and we've expanded the tree further so you can see all of the storage pools that are defined. And we've clicked on pool 130. So on the right-hand side, you can see the current display within our runtime system for that storage pool. If you want to change the definition, you simply use your mouse to right-click on that pool 130 on the left-hand side here in the left pane, and it gives you a pop-up window that indicates you want to alter that storage pool. And again, you don't need to know the syntax. It shows you that we're in pool 130, and it has GUI-friendly ways to make the only modifications that you can make to that pool at runtime, which would be to change the cushion or the relocatable threshold. You'll see on the very right of this side, there's more options. So once you make the changes you want, you can simply hit OK, and that will go ahead and implement it, and that would be the same as shooting a DCMT very dynamic command on the mainframe. If this CV participates in a sysplex, then you can use the broadcast buttons on the right so that you're updating this definition dynamically, not only for this specific central version, but also for all others that might be accessing it. If we could move on, please. Thank you. You do have to remember that whenever you make a change dynamically to your CV, if you're satisfied with the results, then you do need to go back and make that dynamic change permanent. And so, again, you can do that using Visual DBA. You'll see on the left here, we're actually in the Dictionary tab, or the dictionary part of the tree diagram, which that part doesn't show just because it's disappeared off to the top. But if you look at the scrolling bar, you can see that we've scrolled down a little bit, and that's why you don't see the word dictionary. So we're within the system dictionary here. As you can see, anyway, we're in the system dictionary, and within the system dictionary, we have expanded the entity system. That's what I'd be confused in, is that our dictionary name and our entity type are the same. So we're looking at the system definition here. We've gone down to system 1800. So this particular CV has several systems defined in it, but 1800 is the one that we're looking at. We've gone into that system definition. We've pulled up we've expanded the tree for the XA storage pools. We've gotten current on the definition within the SysGen for pool 130. And then you can see that on the right side. Again, here we're using the right click of the mouse to pull up an alter pop-up window. And so it's showing us there, again, the things that we can change. In changing the definition, there are more things we could change. We could change the size of the pool, the types of storage that it contains, those sorts of things. Those things we cannot change dynamically, but we could change them here if we wanted to. And you can see here, again, the cushion size and the relocatable threshold, the things that we could change dynamically, are here also. So you can make the same changes here that you did in your dynamic version, hit OK, and we're good to go. When you right-click on these entities, if you were to right-click on that system 1800, you'll also see a generate button. So once you make this change to the definition, you can then generate it, and then you're all set to cycle your CV and bring that change back in whenever you like. Thanks, Sheila. Moving on. Thank you. One thing that I personally think is really handy is just verifying that you have the high performance storage protect option turned on, and you can do that on the mainframe with a DCMT command here. It's very easy. You just go into the runtime system, as you see on the left there, looking at your CV system, get current on your CV storage pools. Instead of looking at a particular storage pool, we're going to see the display of all of them on the right-hand side. And right there at the bottom, very clearly, it says High Performance Storage Protect option enabled. So really easy to see all of your storage pools and whether or not you have the HPSP turned on for your site. Great, thank you. Another example of what you can monitor using Visual DBA, we've gone through and looked at, on the left side, you see we're looking at what's called activity, and we've expanded the tree under active program pools, and we're looking specifically at the XA reentrant program pool. And you can see on the right, it's got a pie chart to show you what that looks like, which is definitely something you cannot do on the mainframe. Now, on the right pane, you'll see there's a couple of things. It says Program Pie, which is what we're looking at, and then there's another tab that says Active Program Detail. So if you wanted to actually see what this would look like on the mainframe, you can do that as well. You can simply click that Active Program Detail tab, and that will pull up that same display. For many of our users, they find this pie chart much more helpful and just easier to internalize and interpret that same information. Going on ahead. Yep, thank you very much. We're still under that activity tab on the left-hand side, and you might want to, for instance, see which users are signed on to your system. Now, this was one of our test central versions within CB, so it was one that didn't happen to be very busy when I was putting these slides together. But nonetheless, you'll see here under activity, what we've gone through is expanded it. You can see all the different entity types you can monitor under activity, the active program pools that you're looking at, queues, active storage pools, etc. In this case, we've expanded the user signed on, and we can see that there's only one that's signed on. And so I went ahead and clicked on that, just a left click on that within that left tree. And what that initiates is actually a search log. So you'll see on the right side that we're looking at all of the activity that this specific user who's currently signed on has executed during this cycle of the CV. And if you did a quick scan, you see that every line on that right-hand pane has that username mentioned in it somewhere. So if you're wanting to check and see what particular users are doing, great way to do that. Might help you ensure that your security is implemented the way you want to make sure people are only executing things that they should be. If you want to move ahead, please, Sheila, thanks. Another thing that DBAs commonly do is to monitor the journal status. So here you'll see on the leftmost pane for Visual DBA, again, we've expanded a different branch of the tree. We're kind of moving it down it a bit. We're under the central version now. And it may take a while if you start using this to just remember and figure out, well, I want to look at the journals. Which one of these tabs is that under? Is it under activity? Is it under central version? Once you use it a while, those things do usually get committed a little bit to memory. But if you forget, it's really easy just to expand the tree and then close it if you don't see what you're looking for there. So here we're under the central version tree, and we've gone down to journal status. We clicked on that, and you can see within the left pane, it'll list specific journals if you wanted to look at them one at a time. On the right-hand pane, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. They clicked the Raw Properties tab up at the top there, so you can see, we'll see the display here exactly as you would see it if you were doing a DCMT display active journals on your mainframe. Going on ahead. Thank you. This is another tab under central version where you've clicked the deadlock to see, what is our deadlock interval set to, and that's showing it to us here. You'll see on the right-hand pane, they have that deadlock and then raw properties and then search log. If you were to click the search log, it would actually show you any entities in the log that contain the word deadlock. So it'll very quickly and easily show you any deadlocks that have happened in your system, which is something that a lot of folks like to monitor. Moving forward, please. Thank you. So we grouped down again on the leftmost pane. We're looking at the DC system now, that component of the runtime system. And we're looking at the system trace. We want to see if it's on or off. That's one of the options that you can set. So we just clicked on Trace System, and you can see on the right side that it is indeed turned on. And you can see also on the left pane all the different entities that you can monitor within this tree branch, the queue depth, the MP mode, your load live, the limits you have set, etc. Moving on forward. So here, what we're checking, we've gotten, this is actually a good example to point out a couple of things to you. So first, you'll notice in this Visual DBA window, we have all of these various windows open. So on the very left panel, or part of the display, you'll see that node window, which is what we saw on the very, very first slide, which shows you all of the CDs, or data sources, that Visual DBA has access to. And you can see through that little lightning bolt that we're connected to fill test. Now, if you look up at the top of that particular box, you'll see it says list of virtual nodes, and there's a little X. So a lot of times, if folks are only going to be working on one CD, they'll click that X, which gets rid of that node window. So it just gives you bigger windows to work with on the other side. But here we left it open so you could see, how the whole thing looks if you leave it open. In the middle pane, you see we have scrolled down. We are connected to fill test, and I believe we're looking at the dictionary here. So we've expanded the system definition, and again, we've gone down to system 1800, so looking at the definition for that. And on the right side, you can see that we're checking to see whether system tracing is turned on or not. And you can see the different parameters there that you could modify. So if we wanted to change this in the definition, we could right-click on that under System 1800, and it would allow us to alter these parameters. Moving on, please. Great, thanks. Another folks that people often ask us about is how to check their zip effectiveness. And this is a really easy way to do that. So under Visual DBA, you simply go to the DC part of your, tree. And once that's expanded, you go down to the subtask entry, get current on subtask 1, which is your main task. And then you can see there the statistics for CPU time, user mode CPU time, that is, versus system mode CPU time. You can see the CPU effectiveness displayed there, and then also at the bottom within that pink box, you can see the effectiveness that would be displayed there. Moving on forward. Great. Another example of a pie chart. This one, as you can see, has a lot more colors in it. What we're looking at here is the full space report. So we've gone to look at a particular area. We're looking at the segment sysdiral and the area DDL DML, so that's our dictionary area. And you can see on the left, you have the two options. You can run the SMP space report, which is usually a little quicker, or you can run the full space report, which is more detailed. And you can see all the different colors that are available to you there at the bottom in terms of the utilization and what they represent in your pie chart. So again, it's a visually much easier way to interpret or to process the amount of available space, the number of pages, with what degree of free space. So if you're using this and using it dynamically to monitor your system, if it stayed in this status, you'd probably be fine. But if you gradually see the red increasing more and more and those various shades of green decreasing, it'd probably be time to expand that area, make it a little bigger. Moving on, please. Great. And this is an example of the other kind of graph that you can see using Visual DBA. It's a bar chart, clearly. And so what we're looking at here is the statistics for each area. And it's a little complicated to read. On the left side panel, you can see a list of all of the areas. And if you look at the graph on the right, you'll see each of those areas listed there by segment name and area name. The segment names are all along the top, and then the area names are kind of staggered across 2 lines to make it a little more readable. What we've done in this case, you can see for that sysdiral.ddldml, we've clicked on that, which is what that box represents. And if you do so let me back up a sec. For each of these bars, it may be a little challenging to see, but there's a green bar and then a little bit of yellow at the top. And the green indicates the number of records that were found in the buffer. The yellow indicates the physical reads, and that legend is there at the bottom. And then if you right-click on a particular one, like we've done here for the DDL-DML, it will pop up the actual specific numbers. So if you want to see those, you can do those here and get both the specific informational detail as well as the bar chart showing you the ratios. Moving on forward. Again, monitoring your buffers is something folks like to do. You'll see here again at the bottom a legend with the different colors, the found in buffer, physical reads, physical writes, a teeny little red line there. And again, we've right-clicked on this. This is our, looks like one of the default buffers. And we can see the specific number statistics there that are displayed as well. Moving on, please. Great, so we're looking here at a very different view of Visual DBA. Yes, we are in the same tool, but we've taken a different aspect of it. We're no longer looking at the tree structure, which we were looking at before, and now we're looking at the command console. So within Visual DBA, across the top, very top, where we were looking before to see which CV we were in, you can see now it still indicates the name of the central version, which is fill test, but it also indicates we're in the command console and with its own results cache. And so in the top, we've manually keyed, well, a couple of things here. You can see there's a couple of pull-down menus. One says sysdict. That pull-down menu will allow you to specify which dictionary you want to connect to. The right-hand one will allow you to connect to various compilers. So this window allows you to enter syntax, if you already know that, for pretty much anything you want. If you're issuing an SQL command, you would choose SQL. If you want to issue a command that you would normally enter in OCF, say a display DMCL or an alter DMCL, you would choose OCF or BCF from that pull-down menu instead where it says SQL. If you wanted to modify your system definition, you can also enter sysgen as a compiler there. So all of our online compilers are available in that pull-down menu, and you can enter the specific syntax you want. Within this top window, here we've chosen the SQL compiler, which is a part of OCF or BCF, but it's indicated separately here in Visual DBA. We've entered a specific SQL query. We've executed it, and you can see the results displayed here. So it's a very quick and easy way to use syntax if that's already part of what your knowledge base. Moving on forward. Here's another example, and you can see here what I'm talking about. We've changed dictionary. We're no longer in sysdict. We're now in system, and we're not using the SQL compiler anymore. We're using OCF, and we've entered a print page command. So we just enter the syntax there as you would, and it displays the results there at the bottom. You can see it. Moving on forward. One of the very handy things about SQL, which I'll simply talk about here, this slide doesn't show it, is that there's an SQL assistant, and that's one of the buttons there along the top next to the dictionary pull-down menu. And basically what it will do is open a series of pull-down menus and ask you what type of command you want to enter. In this case, we want to do a select or a query. It'll then walk you through all of the available schemas, both SQL and non-SQL schemas. You pick a schema. It'll then walk you through all the table or records that are defined within that. You can pick the records you want. If you pick more than one, like in this case, we chose both department and employee, it will then ask you what kind of, if you want to join those and in what way, and you can specify that. it'll craft the specific syntax for you, and then you simply execute it as we did on the previous slide, and your results appear here. Very, very easy to use and handy. Auto-tune is also available, so this is just an example of one of our more recent changes. I think we introduced this for IDMS 18.0, and as you can see, you can do it under Visual DBA as well. We're looking at the system definition, and we're checking that auto-tune, and we've right-clicked, so we have our pull-up menus to display the alter and what the properties are. You can modify that, you can hit OK, change the definition, regenerate the CV, and you're ready to go. Moving on forward. There's also a very, very handy warning system that's consistent throughout Visual DBA. So let's say you specify a certain value for a parameter and you're not really sure what the options are, but you want to go as high as you can. So in this case, you just specified all 9s. Well, you'll get this warning which says the value you specified, all 9s, is out of range. And so it's going to automatically adjust it to the nearest value that's valid within the valid range, which in this case is 32K, basically 32760. You would simply hit OK to accept that and move forward. So again, a great way to know that you don't have to know the syntax to be able to use Visual DBA really effectively. So those are all the screenshots I have for you this morning about the different things you can do within Visual DBA. I hope it gives you a sense of the flexibility it has, the ease of use. Let's focus a little bit now, and by the way, this is not intended to be a webcast where you memorize everything, but simply an introduction to familiarize you with the tool. If you're implementing it and you have specific questions, the documentation is actually quite good. And of course, you can always open a case with us in CA support, and I or one of the other engineers will be happy to walk you through how to customize it, how to accomplish what you want to accomplish using Visual DBA. So let's move forward to see, out of that wonderfully diverse and complex tree and all the different things you can access using Visual DBA, how to monitor that. So you're only allowing specific users to see particular parts of it. So Visual DBA runs as an external run unit on the mainframe, which means any of the CVs that you want to access, that you saw us accessing earlier, those CVs must be up for Visual DBA to access them. So it's the same restriction that you would have if you're trying to do things directly on the mainframe interactively with the CV. So there's no additional restriction there. And since Visual DBA is running as an external run unit, any and all security that you have defined on the mainframe is fully in place, fully enforced. No one can use Visual DBA to do anything that they would not be able to do on the mainframe. Visual DBA just lets them do it, in most cases, more easily. So moving forward, what Visual DBA Enhanced Security does is it limits the view a person has within Visual DBA so that that tree structure only displays the things which you grant them access to. Now, this is an additional level of security that you set up on the mainframe, but it impacts Visual DBA. So what it will do is it will tailor the views so that people cannot access something. So even if you have not specified particular access on the mainframe, you know, security that would limit what someone can do, you can do that in Visual DBA simply by limiting what they can see, because if they cannot see it through Visual DBA, they cannot change it using Visual DBA. So all of that is done through this thing called Enhanced Object Security. And there's, sorry, yes, this is a little confusing. This is fine, Sheila, thanks. So there's basically a couple of steps involved here. First thing you have to do is turn on this Enhanced Object Security, and you do that in this table procedure, sysca.vdba_version5. There's a specific parameter called no server role. If it's present, that means the Enhanced Object Security is not active. So if you do not see, this is one of those weird double negatives, if you do not see no server role, then you know your Enhanced Object Security is activated. It's active within the specific node or data definition where you've turned it on. So once it's turned on, you'll have to establish a user or system profile, associate users with that profile, and then within an IDD module is where you would specify the desired levels of access. So let's look at a few examples of that. Going on ahead, please, Sheila. Well, first, just to indicate again the ODBC data sources. For each of these data sources, you will have to turn on that enhanced security if you want to do that. So going on ahead now. Thank you. So this is an example of the syntax I mentioned earlier. If you want to turn it on, that's what it looks like at the top. If you want to disable it, you would enter the command that's showed here. You'll simply alter that table procedure to add the specific parameter that turns off the enhanced security. And moving on. Thank you. This is a little bit complicated, but we don't need to stay here long. This is just a syntax tree, so if you're familiar with the IDMS and CA manuals, you'll probably recognize this. So it's just an example within IDD of what the syntax would look like in order to indicate what a person has access to. So the DOM objects are the different objects we've seen on that tree, like schemas, et cetera. You might have to indicate a parent instance, a filter, et cetera. So these are just the different parameters, and I'll walk through each of these one at a time on the upcoming slides. If we could move forward. Thank you. So here's an example of the IDD Profile Module, the entries, just continuing that. This is not the example yet, it's just further explaining. The valid operations are the operations that you want to permit. So they're pretty straightforward here, the codes versus what they represent. If you, sorry folks, give me just 1 second. Sorry for that brief interruption. My connection got physically severed here for a moment. So here you see the different actions that a user can perform. So each code, A, C, D, U, et cetera, indicates which operation it is, and then, just the first letter of each. You can allow a person to alter certain things, create, drop, or if you give them update, it allows all three of those. There's also a separate setting for security, which allows people to do grant, revoke, register, et cetera. And if you want someone to be able to do all of these things, you would give them full access to it. Moving on ahead. Great. So here we start to see some actual syntax examples. So at the very top, you see add module. This would be the module name. A user is registered for all for this module. That's probably just the person creating it. And we're allowing the public access only to display this particular module. And then you'll see the module source. So this is that syntax tree that we were looking at a minute ago. So you'll see here for each line, there's an entity type, which is that DOM object. So on the first one, that's the SQL schema. And then we've got that qualified by the sysdict, that's the dictionaries within which we want to allow this access. And then there's a slash, and we're allowing it for any schemas that begin with the word demo. So we're using a mask here, so that that's what the asterisk represents. So at the top, before that little word msend, you've got the actual module, and then at the bottom, I've listed what each one of these lines represents. And they're color-coded, so you can hopefully easily see what each one does. So for this particular end-user module, we are allowing, and let me back up just 1 sec. So you see on the last 2 lines here for IDD class and record, and also for activity, there's an F in parentheses, and that F corresponds to those activities or action types that we were granting to users. So that means full. So in terms of the IDD class, records, and modules, this end user would have full access. They would be able to view, update, delete if you want to, any of these entities within the IDD class and record module within the SysDic dictionary, and the same for activity, they can view it fully. On the first two lines, we don't have any action specified, and that indicates view only. So they would only be able to view schemas and non-SQL schemas. Those are the only, viewing is the only actions that they could perform against those. So typical example of what an end user module look like. If you want to move on ahead, please, Sheila.
I did advance it, Cal. Are you not seeing that?
No, I'm still on end user. Oh, hang on. Oh, there we go. I see it now. Sorry. Yep.
Just one of them.
Yep. There we go. Got it. Sorry. Had to switch panels here. So the one we're looking at here is for operator. And you can see, again, we've got a separate module name for it, and we put the word operator in it just so, we can see that that's there. And then, again, we're letting this person access only to the activity and the statistics, and we're giving them full view to the activity, but only view in the statistics. Going on ahead, please. And you'll just see a few of these examples. We don't necessarily have to go through each one in full detail. For security, you can see here we're giving them dictionary access, view only, and again, we've got the color pairing so you can see the explanation below of all the lines above. I've grouped them a little bit so you can see for groups, essential users, and the other entities listed here. Those all have the same access, so they've got the one explanation line at the bottom. So we can go ahead and page forward again, please, Sheila. These are here for your reference, and as you can see here in the VDBA user guide, there's a few other examples also of data administrator, DC administrator, etc. And this is the link to that Visual DBA user guide. Moving on forward. Great. So just to review again, what you do is you first create, once you have that IDD module created, the next thing you would do would be to create a profile, which would either be a user or system profile. It might be helpful to use a name that's easy to remember, like end user. And then you're going to alter that profile and add this specific attribute. So you would say alter user profile, attribute, and then the specific name, the IDMS R17. And you would say equals to, and you would list the module name there, the IDD module name that you want to associate with this particular profile. So here we've got program demo specified as the IDD module name. We're adding that into a user profile end user, and then the final step would be to associate the user or a group with that profile. Once that's done for this user and group, their access will be limited to the access that you specified in that IDD module. Moving on ahead. So you can see there's a few steps here, but it's a very, very powerful way to allow Visual DBA to be a tool that can be useful to virtually anyone in your shop, even as far as defining it for read access only. So I hope through today's presentation you've seen the ease that Visual DBA can deliver for pretty much anything, administering, monitoring, using your central version. One thing we didn't show is that there's also a way to display the syntax that Visual DBA has created when you use the point-and-click approach. So if you wanted to use it as a tool to actually train people in syntax, you could do that as well. You could let them use the GUI front-end approach and look at the syntax that was generated and treat it as a learning tool in that way. Definitely shortens the learning curve for newer folks coming into the mainframe world. Dashboard approach with this familiar tree diagram. And as we've seen, you can tailor that for specific users or job functions. Moving on ahead. And we've got a list here of more information, different places you can go, some instructions for installing it, how to download it, ways to use it. And I think we're getting close to the end of my part of this presentation. Can we go on ahead, Sheila? There's just a couple more links here. I don't know, Sheila, if this presentation will be available for folks to download in case they want to review it more closely. That's this, but maybe that's something you could address as you wrap this up.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think that's my part.
Actually. Yeah, thank you, Cal. And I probably should have kicked things off with a general introduction, so my apologies for that. I'll use Monday morning as my excuse for that. But anyways, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sheila Miller. I'm the product manager for the databases supporting IDMS and Datacom. And this will be available actually as a replay on the communities. But I also wanted to mention to everybody, if you're not familiar with the Mainframe Virtual Summit, back in June, we actually hosted a live Mainframe Virtual Summit. We shared insight on the Mainframe best practices. I don't know if anybody joined us or not, but this site will actually be open throughout the rest of the year and includes a database area where you can find videos and things like that. So you can register by following this link. So I wanted to just make mention of that. So this is actually the third in our webcast series. So you'll see our schedule for the remainder of the year. And I really wanted to share. I don't know if Glenn, you have anything in closing.
No, that was great, Sheila, and thank you, Cal, as always. It's a great session, and yeah, but yeah, like Sheila said, we're recording this, so the replay will be available either later today or tomorrow. And as long as Sheila and Cal are okay with it, I can also make sure that I publish the final PowerPoint out in the community as well, as long as you guys are okay with that.
Yep, that's fine.
And we only have a couple minutes left for questions. I don't see anything in the Q&A. If you are on the phone line and have a question, now would be the time you could unmute your line to ask it. So please feel free to hit #6 to unmute your line. And we'll give everyone a moment to do that or to type any questions you might have. And if you have any questions, later today or tomorrow or whenever something pops into your head after you watch this today, please feel free to go out and ask the question in the community as well. Or I see Cal put his I see Cal's email address right there on the screen, so feel free to email him directly as well.
Absolutely. If you want to speak with me, I'm happy to do that. Some folks in the past have requested like an individual webcast for individual WebEx for their sites to walk through Visual DBA for more users than could be available. So that might be something we could set up if anyone needed it or desired it. And of course, you can open a support case, and I'll be happy to help you with that as well.
All right, I don't see any questions coming in, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up for the day. So thank you, Cal, thank you, Sheila, and also thank you to everyone who took the time out of their day to join us and attend this webcast today. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.